the sound of that heartbeat, it's either Huey Lewis or Susan Williams, very nervous about being on the program this morning. I'm not sure which. No, she's good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. Welcome to a Wednesday, middle of the week. We were talking last hour that I think Wednesday officially is the day you can start to talk about the upcoming weekend.
You can, yeah. I agree. It is truly over the hump day. Monday and Tuesday, we're trying to get a grip on what's about to happen. Well,
I think Monday and Tuesday, we're trying to get to Wednesday. And Wednesday, we're now thinking about Friday.
From noontime, it's all just downhill, you know.
Yeah.
We also were talking about how much time is wasted during the workday and how difficult it is for employers to have to deal with that because, 15 minutes here or half an hour there, that adds up during the course of a week.
I think I saw something on Facebook, an article last night that I wanted to read. I bet you read that.
Yes, that's the one. Kim Flynn over in at Star Marketing posted that, and it makes you wonder, though. I'm sure some of the time is probably needed. Mark was joking about it last hour, but to take 10, 15 minutes and enjoy that cup of coffee or just sort of unwind a little bit, especially if you're stressed at work.
Well, I think things have changed so much. For those of us old enough to remember, Mark, I think that's you and I. When we started working eons ago, decades ago, you were either punching a clock or keeping a time card, and there was kind of a certain expectation of production. Things have changed so much. So even in the traditional businesses like banking, I've been talking with some bankers recently, and their approach is very different than that of the past, where they were really keeping numbers on how you were, meeting certain things. I know they still are doing that. I know they still have goals and are trying to set strategies. But the whole idea of relationship building is so prevalent across all of our businesses, whether it's a small service industry or actually in sales. This idea that you sell and you accomplish things when you establish relationships, and that takes coffee breaks. That takes having some downtime to get comfortable with your customers, with your coworkers. And so while it can be interpreted as a waste of time, it's also a strategy.
Well, I can remember selling cars and coming in on a 12-hour day, that we worked 3 12-hour days during the week, and come in at 9 o'clock and grab a cup of coffee and the paper and spend the first 30 minutes, reading the paper at your desk, And, we would get in trouble for, that was a time waster. We should have been on the phone. We should have been, checking. There were any number of things that we should have been doing, but reading the paper and drinking coffee. And
but we now know that it's part of how you prepare for that, being able to have a conversation with a customer, and being able to, that's just the way we function now. And if for some of us, when we're taking that 15-minute break or taking that time to have a cup of coffee and talk to someone, trust me, we're putting in the time.
Right.
So the traditional 8-hour day is much a thing of the past. So I think in almost across all industries, maybe with the exception of some manufacturers who are still punching a time clock, you'll see that most employees would gladly stay an extra hour, put in a weekend day on occasion to make up for the fact that they aren't constantly on the clock.
How much of it has to do also with the fact that maybe employees, especially small businesses or employers, look at employees and think, boy, I wish I could pay you more, so let's add some flexibility to that.
It is absolutely a consideration. We read that a lot with it being harder to pay higher wages and give benefits. I mean, health care, paid benefits. That's just tough for so many small businesses. The flip side is to be able to give them some flexibility. It may be that little easier work environment or more flexibility with when they arrive at the beginning of the day, leave at the end, or days off.
Well, it can be in the way of a reward, too. If you have a particularly productive employee who is, say, selling over the quota of cars or is churning out more stuff than maybe is expected, as long as that level is maintained or a minimum level is maintained, a lot of employers kind of look the other way too about these little time wasters and stuff. If your employee is putting out the kind of work that you need, let them take the breaks that they need.
Well, it is that. We have that discussion a lot around our office, the advantages of working in a salaried as opposed to an hourly position, being exempt instead of non-exempt.
Yeah.
And the flexibility that comes with that status, that you're meeting the kind of required work to accomplish that, and then with that you have that flexibility. And I was really surprised to be in a recent meeting with an industry that I would have expected to still be very old school and not allow that said we have to, particularly when we have families working for us, when a husband and wife work for us and they have children, we have to say to them, hey, let's work with your schedules a little bit. You can come in a little earlier and you can come in a little later. I think 5 years ago that same business would have said, well, we can't possibly do that.
Wow.
We have a production line and we can't. But that's kind of one of the things that businesses are having to do to attract the workforce they need.
Is that why you think younger people are starting to look to come back to this region, because they know they can bring their family here, their kids can have a great education, and there's a good chance the boss is going to say, hey, yeah, they've got that 12 o'clock concert at the school, go watch it.
Well, I think it stands to reason that there's a better chance they're going to find a flexible employer here, at least in current times, because there are less really great employees available than, so employers are looking for. So if you come with the right skills, but more importantly, the right attitude, if you come ready to work, to show up and be a problem solver and do the job, I think you're going to see lots of opportunity for flexibility here in our region, where if you're in an area where there's a little more competition for that one job, you might not have that quite as much.
It also sounds like employers are recognizing, I was going to say beginning, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, employers are recognizing now that a happy employee will be a more productive employee.
And a retained employee, which is important because there's a cost of replacing employees. So you do want to do what you can to keep an employee happy enough to stay with you, because every time you have to change them out, there's a cost to that. I think one of the challenges that we have to continue to work on, though, is really clear communication, because there is a real risk when if you become so flexible that nobody kind of knows the rules. And that's where it gets dangerous. It gets uncomfortable. If you're not very clear that we're willing to be flexible on these items, but here are things we're not flexible on. Here are the things that have to happen to keep our business working. And sometimes that communication doesn't happen well, and then there's confusion and it ends badly.
This isn't a political question, but we've been talking about small businesses, and you talk to these folks every day. The Affordable Care Act. Do some of these small businesses think, okay, this is great because I don't have to worry about it, it's up to the employees, or do they think, well, maybe I should try to pay for some of that? Is that part of the conversation today when you're dealing with small businesses, or? Because I know the chamber offered insurance at one time. Do they still have the chamber choice, or
they have the program? But now with the new laws, it's really restricted how they can even offer it. So I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of conversations with insurance with our members, because it's such a complicated issue that the conversation is different business to business, and even kind of wrapping ourselves around that to have that conversation is very, very difficult. In general, the feedback I get from businesses is they're frustrated by it. They tend to either be in one camp or the other, that they're just simply can't offer any kind of help with health insurance. So it's a kind of a non-conversation for them. We just can't offer it. Or they do, and in those cases, you're usually talking about a little bigger business with more employees who are involved in benefits packages, and they say it's very complicated. They say it's just a tough program to be working with. So there's not really a great story to be told there, but I wish I could talk more specifically about it. It's complicated.
Yeah, I would think that would be an issue, that if you're starting a business, or if you're that mom and pop business, down in the storefront in Oil City, and you want to hire an employee, and I'm sure that's a conversation that employee would like to have with an employer.
Yeah, I think that that would be an interesting subject for our young professionals to maybe convene about at some point. I think we've seen that young young people in the last few years have been a bit apathetic about health care. I mean, we came up in a time where that was a given, that you would have some type of health benefits, and it no longer is. And we kind of went through a time where young people are just saying, yeah, that's okay. I'll take $1 or $2 an hour over that benefit. But I know, as we see this group that I've now worked with for 7 to 10 years, they're getting to an age where I know that they're realizing that's an important thing to have. They have families now. Mm-hmm. They're beginning to deal with, perhaps some illnesses, some, things where they need health care. So they would be an interesting group to sit down with and say, how is it affecting you and your family? We're
here with Susan Williams. She's the Executive Director of the Venango Area Chamber of Commerce. This is the Morning Drill on Stream Television and the Allegheny News Talk Sports Network. It is 8:21. Speaking of young people, you have a big event coming up.
We do. We're really excited. On Friday, we'll be celebrating our Flex Presents event, where we have 12 nominees. I have their faces in front of me here on my newsletter. You can pop in and read all about.
Mark's trying to take a look at that, but Mark, you haven't been eligible for 50 years.
Our 12 nominees, they're all profiled on our website if you go to our newsletter page, and you can read all about them. 12 terrific nominees, all active in our community, some for a few years and some for many years. They're all under 40, of course, and as I look around, I think most of them come closer to being under 30. That is an event where we celebrate young professionals in our region. We kind of show a spotlight on these 12, but I would encourage our listeners that if you're out there thinking, boy, we need to do more to retain young professionals, to figure out how to work with them. We'd like them on our board, or we'd like to be employing them. I get those calls all the time. This is a chance for you to get face to face with them, to show up that evening, tell them you value them, that you like a relationship, bring your business cards. It is a nice gala event where we'll be having some, refreshments. We'll have a very short program at, we start at 7 and we end at 9. So around 8 o'clock we'll convene our program, and we'll bestow the Young Professional of the Year on one of these great young people. But it's a really good chance for you to come out. And I think some people think that you have to be under 40 to attend the event, and that is not true. If you would love to get to know young professionals better, this is a great event. Super, there's our logo. And come out for that event. You can call the chamber and make a reservation. To tell you the truth, right now, while our attendance is looking very good, we have plenty of room. So if you find that come Thursday, Friday, that I guess I can make it, show up. It's $15 to get in, and we'll be happy to greet you at the door and let you in to be part of that.
I know, I think last week you spent time mentioning each of the businesses that they're involved in, and it was what I took away from that was it's not just like, here's a group that are similar. They're all very different.
Oh, very, very different. We have some of them in nonprofits, some of them own their own businesses. Some of them are serving in elected positions or seeking elected positions. We have quite a variety. We've got some second-generation business owners. And that's one thing. A lot of people think that when we talk about young professionals that we're talking about strictly white-collar, that we're talking about those doctors, lawyers, the people that you would have, when we were younger, seen around the board tables.
Indian chiefs.
Yeah, there you go. Well, around the board tables now, we want any young professional who kind of gets what the issues at hand are. So that is, we welcome into that group, our landscapers and our laborers and, anybody at any level that's out there working or attempting to find a job. I'll be out at the job fair at the Cranberry Mall today, and hope that I'll meet a few young professionals out there today that are looking for a way to connect to a network. It might help them find their next job. It might help them find their next volunteer community, and to tell you, occasionally it might help them find their next husband or wife.
There you go.
We have definitely had, when you return to an area where you haven't been for a while, it can take a while to establish those social relationships, and Flex certainly has been a vehicle for a few of our young professionals to meet people who are now, or who they kind of hang out with, who they ride bikes with or hike the trails with or date. So.
Mark, what was the site you kept looking at? Farmers Dating?
Yeah, Farmers Dating.
There you go.
Yeah.
Those are great ads that run at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock in the morning.
Cool. Well, this is a great group. And in fact, I think, again, one of the kind of myths of a young professional group is that it is all about the social piece, that they're meeting up and hanging out and trying to date each other. That is actually not the majority of the group. The majority of this group are young couples and young parents. So So, in fact, many of them do find that where they're meeting up is at gym class, gymnastics class with their little ones.
Isn't that funny? I mean, I take a look at the people we talk with now compared to 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it is amazing because you start to see the same, groups of parents at swim meets or basketball games
moving
or
through
soccer.
The stages.
Yeah,
yeah.
So you kind of you grow up with their kids in addition to yours. So it's fascinating. Yep. The trick is, can folks put the phones down or the tablets down to have a conversation?
I think they can. I think I'm a champion for technology. I think actually it connects us better. You do need to be able to put it down and look each other in the eye.
But that's part of the networking. You were talking about that within the workplace, to have that cup of coffee and to talk or build up some information so that when somebody does come in, you can have a conversation with them. But that's sort of what social media is all about. Is you're building relationships.
It is. We can share information so quickly that we now know where each other are, what each other's doing, what we're interested in. So it can speed up the opportunity to get together and be together and what to talk about. And again, I would still agree that there's a challenge to get everybody to drop their phones and actually engage in the conversation when you're in front of each other. And we've all been with groups where it's like nobody's talking. But I still think it can be the vehicle by which we connect and find out more about one another.
I think we all envision a place where we want to be. And I'm sure that you think daily about where you want the chamber to be. Mm-hmm. How far are you from that vision? I mean, if you could have everything to be the way you're envisioning it, what stage are you at? Are you over the halfway point? Are you 75% of the way there?
Well, I haven't thought of it quite that way. I mean, there are actually tasks. We talked about succession planning last year. There are things along the way of planning that I've been working on for all of the 10 years that I've been there, and I make a little progress, and then I realize something needs to be done differently. So, boy, I don't know exactly where along that stage is. I would predict that mark will keep changing. But are we making progress? I absolutely believe we are. But I think as quickly as I have a vision for our organization, that vision is changing to adapt to what's going on around us. I think my biggest vision is that we will just have total engagement, that everyone in the community will know and recognize who we are as an organization, and we will get where we fit in properly. And that's going to continue to change as the vehicles for letting people know that change.
I'm sure you deal with companies who are always looking at long-range, plans,
sure.
And here's 5 years out, 10 years out. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense to think that way anymore when things are changing so rapidly?
Oh, I think you have to, but I think more focus on short plans is probably valuable. I wouldn't throw out the 10 or 20 year plan. I think some things need that. And time goes quickly, so you've got to be thinking out. But we also have to be able to manage the next year or two and know that plan has to be very, very flexible. Because, again, workforce is changing really quickly. You just can't depend that the people that you're working with today will be the people you'll be working with 6 months from now. The technology, obviously, is changing things so quickly. And then, we've talked in the last few weeks about just the things that happen when buildings burn or natural disasters occur or relationships change, that you're displaced from the physical space you're in. All of those things, can change your plan. So your plan needs to be very, very flexible to adjust to what might happen. So, keeping a long-range broad plan, but then having the specifics be shorter term, I think is a better strategy.
Susan Williams joining us this morning. We'd love having you on here because we can ask you all these questions and we get great answers. And
Just my opinion.
Well, yeah, but I think your attitude and your love for what you do, I know you make a difference in the community you serve and beyond. And, those relationships expand beyond just Oil City and Seneca and Franklin, but obviously with your relationship with Krista, and you're doing what's best for the folks here in the region, and give you a lot of credit for that.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And I'll tell you, we talk about the social media a lot, and I belong now to a Facebook group of chamber professionals that has, I think, over 2,000 participants now, and many of them very, very active. And that has become a go-to group for me, where I can look to see what their experience is. We share our challenges, we share our successes, we share our funnies. And in fact, with